Hey people, welcome to Amateur Hour. My name is Alaya, if you didn't already know that. So, as I'm sure many of you know, I bought a Line 6 Helix floor a couple months ago, I think like 3 months ago. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen my unboxing / reaction video to that. If not, I will link that below. Since then, I have actually gotten a lot of questions asking me what I think about the Helix, if I would recommend buying it, and just kind of giving a review in general of the Helix itself. I do want to state that though I am reviewing this item, I am by no means an expert on gear or the Helix or Line 6 itself. This is just kind of my personal experience with the product and what I think of it and what I've heard about it, hopefully giving you guys some insight if you are considering buying anything from the Line 6 family or the floor unit itself. There are 4 things that really stand out to me about the Helix floor, and that is accessibility, portability, reliability, and versatility. Not necessarily in that order. We'll start with accessibility. What I mean by that is how easy is it for a beginner player to use versus a professional player? How easy is it to figure out, manipulate, and get some good tones out of it, and just generally understand? So that was kind of one of the biggest things for me when I was considering buying the Helix floor was, am I going to be able to use it and use it how it should be used and get good tones out of it? I was kind of worried about not having much experience with gear and how that was going to translate into trying to use the Helix. But as it turns out, the Helix is super user-friendly, it's got a super sleek design, and Line 6 is always coming out with new updates to make that a little bit easier for users. And obviously there are loads of different resources that you can find online, like mainly I use YouTube videos, and there are also Facebook groups, and obviously there are also frequently asked questions on the Line 6 website itself. So you really don't need any prior experience with pedals or amps or anything like that to be able to get good tones out of it. I have only ever really used a compression overdrive, kind of mess around with the looper pedal, and then I've only ever had 1 amp in my possession. I've also used an MD500, which I was basically just using as a dotted eighth delay and a quarter note delay, and then just using it as a tuner. So I really have extremely limited experience prior to using the Helix. If you're willing to mess around with it and put a little bit of time into it and experiment with stuff, then you can actually get some really awesome tones, and it's super easy to understand. Obviously it's not going to be quite as good if you understand all the ins and outs, but again, you can just look up all the answers online and get some tips there. So I mentioned experimenting with stuff and putting time into it. Obviously there is a ton that you can do with the Helix. The floor has cabinets and preamps and tons of effects and just pretty much everything you could need to experiment with tones and sounds and whatever you want, in whatever genre you want. You could go from a heavy metal song to an indie pop song with the press of a button. I don't know why you would want to do that, but it is a possibility. The only thing that I wish that the Helix had was maybe a couple more clean amps. It has a ton of dirty and heavy amps that are super awesome, but I really would like to see maybe a couple more jazz amps. I think they only have 1 jazz amp model at the moment. But Line 6 is always periodically coming out with updates, which they just dropped a major update, the 2.8 and 2.81, which I know some people are still stuck on the 2.71 because they're a little bit nervous about the bugs that they've heard coming with the 2.8. I just updated to 2.8 and I personally haven't had any bugs yet, but I have heard a lot of people talking in Facebook groups about how their snapshots maybe got messed up or the overall volume of their presets is a little bit messed up. Like I said, I own the floor unit personally, but the awesome thing about the Helix family is that there's pretty much a unit for everybody. If you just want to add something to your pedal board, you can always just buy the stomp and add that to your chain, or you can go a little bit cheaper and buy the Helix LT. It also works as an audio interface, so you can run multiple instruments through it, and also microphones or a click track or whatever you wanted to. It works obviously with electric guitars. It also has some bass settings, and you can run acoustic guitars through it, though I've heard that it's kind of difficult to get good tones. And you can also add vocal effects. So another great thing about the Helix is it's super portable. I think the floor unit is about 15 pounds, which is awesome. You can just carry it in a backpack or a gig bag or whatever you're using. I bought the backpack for the Helix specifically, but you don't obviously have to buy that. I've heard of analog pedal boards weighing as much as like 50 pounds, which I don't know what the average weight of a pedal board is. I think it probably is more like 30 pounds or something like that. But if you're also considering that you might have to carry around an amp or a cabinet and all of your guitars that you're using, that adds up to be a lot of weight. And it's really awesome that you can kind of put a lot of that into one compact system that fits on your back. So what's awesome about being able to carry this with you all in one thing is that you don't have to rely on a venue to provide an amp or cabinet or whatever that maybe doesn't sound that great with your rig. You'll always have your tones with you going into the system, and that's what you'll get out, and you'll know what to expect. Putting all of your gear into one unit might sound a little bit scary for some people. But you might wonder, well, what happens if I lose power to the Helix and I'm left with nothing? Personally, I haven't heard of any horror stories happening with the Helix losing power right before a gig or during a gig, but I have heard plenty of stories of people losing power to their pedal board and having to plug directly into an amp or having amp go out. But again, I haven't really heard these stories for the Helix. Obviously, there are going to be some malfunctions with the system, usually coming with a new update. Like I mentioned, people in the Facebook groups online have been posting about the bugs that they're finding in the 2.8 update, but you obviously aren't forced to update to the newest OS, unlike some brands, Apple. So if you wanted to, you could probably even run on like the first operating system. I don't know why you would want to do that again, but it probably is a possibility. So I've actually had a couple people ask me about whether I would buy the Kemper or the Helix and what they should buy, to which I always say I have no idea, because I've literally never been in the presence of a Kemper before, so I have no opinions on that whatsoever. I have very limited knowledge about what the Kemper actually does and how it operates. I'm really only going off of information that I've heard from a select few YouTube videos that have briefly mentioned it. What I can say that I know about is that the Kemper is better for modeling amps. Maybe if you have vintage amps that you want to take that sound out on the road without taking your fragile and expensive amps. But I have heard that the Helix is better overall for effects and just general variety of tones. And that the Kemper is more dependent on whether you know how to mic up an amp and do some audio engineering. But again, I really don't know much about the Kemper, so I can't really make a comparison between the two. But Rhett Shull just came out with a video, and he has actually used both of those systems for a while, so he obviously has a lot more knowledge than I do, so I will link that in the description. I could get super detailed going on about the Helix for even longer, but I think I'm gonna cut the video off here. Hopefully this gave you some insight into what it's like to own the Helix and whether it would be a good fit for you. If you have any questions, obviously you can leave them in the comments, and you can also message me on Instagram at @AliaFranson. I love to talk about gear and music in general with people. I also post some little song covers and just general life updates over there, so you can go follow me on that platform. And if you like this video and stuck around for this long, thank you so much. It means a lot. It would also mean a lot if you would subscribe and leave a comment down below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. All right, stay safe.